The sound effects are running! Oh no! Quick!
There's no sound effects. We have a live audience. The live audience isn't quite seated yet, and here they are.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 43 of this podcast, which I can't remember the name of.
Crafty boy.
I'm a little off my game
you'll
today.
learn it by episode 50.
Yeah, I'll eventually learn it. Yeah, I'm off my game today because my computer died and all my data for everything is on that computer. So life sucks. So I had to buy a new one, and it hasn't got here yet. So there you go. So you're gonna have to suffer with my ugly face in darkness, Locke's gorgeous face, lit always appropriately by his computer. Dave, we don't need to talk about Dave, and Alan looking sexy as ever in his kitchen. Nice. So,
We're working out.
we don't need to talk about Dave. Screw that guy. Screw that guy right there. That guy right there. So how's it going, boys? I think we've got some Christmas ornament stuff lined up today, as well as I don't know what else is going on.
Well, there's a movie coming out.
Oh
maybe
yeah,
people have heard of it. It's called Alvin and the Chipmunks: The Road Chip.
That's right. The Road Chip is coming out
today, actually. So
yeah, I'm excited for this one because the Chipmunks chipwrecked. That I'm surprised there were no Oscars given out for that particular performance.
Absolutely.
I know.
Never seen a Chipmunks movie.
Jason Lee as Dave. Who else could you have chosen in that role? I mean, it takes so much. You got to dig down into your soul to be able to really pull off the most decent Alvin. I mean, you got to get in there and a dude from Mallrats is the way to go.
I wonder how long it takes to actually voice the stuff. Like, does he go in like 8 in the morning and he's out by lunch?
Well, I think he's really in by he's in by 8 and about done by 9. Really, what else does he have to do?
Right.
Especially when although I would just like one time where you hear Dave in the movies saying, Alvin, you cock knocker. I think that would work for me. I think you could totally have that. I think that would sell the film.
Chocolate-covered pretzels.
Some chocolate-covered pretzels and some story about Superman's balls. Because what else do you have other than a couple of 3 chipmunks singing tunes to people? This week we have got this was actually chosen today, this afternoon, because I think we all forgot whose turn it was, Dave.
Locke,
So
actually.
was it Locke? Locke.
It might have been me. I came this close to telling everybody to get Old Cellar Dweller, but I thought $14 a bottle.
I saw that.
I can't.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, $14 a bottle is pretty extreme. Although I will point out that it was good.
Here's the thing, though. I blew $14 on this. Right?
That one can?
No, of course not.
Not
It's fucking 6.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Well, I got this for 11. So
That's because I live in the sticks. The shit costs more up here.
So this week's is Granville Island's Lion's Winter Ale, which has been around for, at least in my memory, about 10 years, 15, I don't know. It's been around for a while. I'm doing my open, which of course is probably a twist-off cap, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So that was a waste of my poor steam whistle opener.
You can still use it.
I know, but it went halfway and then it got stuck. So I'm doing my pour now, boys. I'm moving on to the pour.
Okay.
So we're gonna do that.
Moving
Okay.
right along.
So this one is a beer that I've had for ages, and as I said, it's been around for some time, but I don't think it's been around for like 20 years, but it's been around for a little while. And the first thing I've always noticed is it smells like basically, somebody took a maple tree and it had, coitus with a candy cane, and it produces quite the aroma, I have to say.
You know what? That's an apt description.
It's apt.
It's apt.
I think it tastes of cocoa nubs.
Cocoa nubs?
Yeah, like the thing they make chocolate out of.
Oh.
Nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. Well, I gotta say, I am quite familiar with this beer because I know that every
So
year
tell us
around
all
this
about
time.
it. Tell us what you know.
Well, let me tell you what I do know is that it's made by Granville Island Brewing, which of course is a sham now since they got bought out by Molson, whatever the hell that company's called. But
Really? When did that happen?
I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Granville Island Brewing exists, but not. I don't know. I mean, I of course, I don't work there, so maybe I'm wrong. But it was a sad day for a little while when we heard about the purchase going through. So, I can look it up for you. I do have power of the internet.
As an intermediary sort of phase between big beer and what's going on now, I mean, they were understandably.
It happened in 2009. Molson bought the brewery on Granville Island. And there's also some changes going on in the Molson world because the big brewery that's over on Burrard, just south of the Burrard Street Bridge, I gather is being either converted or knocked down to build condos. I'm not sure where their Molson facilities have gone to. I suspect Richmond or maybe out up the valley a little way. But yeah, it was a sad day. I remember that actually when I heard about that Granville Island Brewing getting purchased by them. Which I at one level is okay because the beer is still okay, but
Put it this
I don't
way,
know.
the biggest question I have about it is, okay, so when Granville Island set themselves up, I mean, look, they're called Granville Island Brewery. I think it's fair that they've got claim to the territory, but it's sort of like Granville Island was set up for artisanal kind of craftsy kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
When stuff like that gets bought out by somebody like Molson, now it's just basically there's a Molson presence, which isn't. I mean, I don't know how artisanal can it be if it's owned by one of the largest breweries in Canada.
Well, I mean
Well,
that's
it all depends on how they do business still, though, right?
yeah. I mean
Is
today.
Molson hands off, or are they the ones calling all the shots?
I don't know. I mean, look, I don't think Molson has been as hands-on as they might have been. I think they've been smart about leaving some stuff alone.
You'd hope so.
But I mean, I've got to say, if it weren't for the fact that it was owned by Molson, do you not think that today Granville Island would be a lot more aggressive in trying new products, new recipes? Like being a part of all the exciting stuff that's going on with all these other companies that didn't get bought by one of the majors and still had to play in today's beer market, right?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
That's fair.
Well, see, I don't know about that because, I mean, no matter who Granville Island Brewery is owned by, they still have to fight for market share.
True.
The fact that they're owned by Molson doesn't give them any extra market share than they would have had otherwise. So they still need to be creative in order to get that market share.
Although I think they've been a lot. Wouldn't you agree they've been a lot more conservative in terms of like they
absolutely
came late to the game on IPAs and the hop thing.
Absolutely,
There's a lot of stuff.
You know what? Granville Island used to be one of my favorite craft breweries here in BC, and I think that they have kind of. I've kind of moved more to like Parallel 49, who really pushes the envelope with a lot of the brews that they put together. And Granville Island just seems to have their brews that they do, and they just cycle them. You know, they have the ones that they do all year round, and then they've got a couple that they cycle that are seasonal, but they never change, and all that. But still, I mean, the fact that they're owned by Molson, they still have to fight for their market share. So they've either got enough market share and they're happy with where their business is at, or
Well, the big thing actually that I had noticed, and I was reading this a little while back, probably a month or two ago, was how the share of that market for the large brewers has dropped quite a bit because, I mean, I'm calling it the rise of the craft, the small craft breweries,
Yeah.
where I gather in the past couple of years that their market share, or at least their sales anyway, have gone up by double. Again, but then again, that probably is less per brewery since that's sharing that amount between all the small places that are showing up. So the one thing, I mean, the thing that happened to the Molson Brewery on Burrard is that they upgraded the system, like their whole system, 2008-ish, somewhere in there, and they were able to produce more beer. And they hired a whole bunch of new people because I remember there was stuff in the local paper and stuff for looking for new people to work their production lines and stuff. And I remember reading in October that they had laid off a whole bunch of people as well this year. So it just kind of shows you just how that sort of how the rise of the craft brewers over the last 2 or 3 years has really just hammered companies like Molson and
absolutely.
Labatt they used to have a Labatt brewery in New West, I think, or was it might have been no, I think it was New West.
There used to be one here in Victoria.
Yeah, and they closed that ages ago, and they sold it for condos and stuff. So, but I think that's what's happening to the brewery on Burrard is that they're going to. They've sold it anyway, and I think that they're going to do something else with that land. But who knows? I mean, it's up to whoever buys it, I guess. And I don't know if the buyer is public yet, but who knows? I'm assuming. I mean, Molson's one of those companies that has breweries all over the place. So if they close this one, they of course have other locations as well.
Somebody was using the old Molson site. One that got shut down just in Ontario as a grow op. So
nice.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything but any. No, the thing that was crossing my mind was earlier today I had a conversation with somebody about what was on tap, and pleased to note that Lighthouse Brewing's Shipwreck has made it over to Vancouver. It's on the taps around town.
Cool.
Interesting. But we were talking about, craft brewing and local beer, and there was a comment about, there's some people that just want their Kokanee, and, it sort of slipped out of my mouth, and I said, well, for a certain generation, Kokanee is local beer. And that's sort of the thing to remember, is that, with all of this craft beer revolution stuff going on, it's you don't want to make the mistake of judging the past by the standards of today. And there's some people that just sort of grew up in a time before craft beer, right? And for them, yeah, I mean, Kokanee is local beer.
It's true. I mean, these places they start as essentially small companies, right? I mean, nobody starts out by being this huge national.
Yeah.
Brand,
you don't
right?
start as a national brand. You find your way up.
They have to start small and start regional, and they build their business from there. And Kokanee back in the day, absolutely, it was a very local beer. I don't know if I'd ever go so far as to say it's a craft brew beer.
No. It's pretty big beer procedure, but
yeah. So what do we think of the? With all that said, the Granville Island Lions Winter Ale.
I am a fan, mainly because this is probably one of the few beers that I would tolerate the level of sweetness in it, because the maple side of things, sort of that natural flavor, as they call it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to check the international beer units. 22. We've got a 22 now. This is the lowest international beer unit beer we've had. So Dave, I noticed you had your headset off. 22 on the international beer unit scale.
For this thing.
But anyway, they basically it's that sort of that malty maple flavor, and that twin. I mean, I call it a candy cane, but that's kind of what it tastes like to me. So I'm kind of happy about that, about this beer, and this is a rare thing for me in a beer. Like I don't like sweet-ish beers. I like light beers once in a while, but if they get into the sweet territory, I'm not a fan. This, I think, because it's sort of a dark beer, sort of in that red zone, the red zone of beer. That's essentially what I think is what makes it tolerable.
So what are your feelings on the topic of fruity beers then?
This is the thing though. When you have a fruit-based beer, it tastes like, generally anyway, the fruit it's representing. This is, sort of a darkish beer. It's a ruby, I guess, is sort of what I would call it. But it has that different kind of smack that you don't expect, because it's called a winter ale. It's not called a winter grapefruit or something. So if it tasted like grapefruit, then I might be surprised. But it's also beer you can actually have, a couple of. So I can't complain. What the hell did you just? Did you just have another one? Block? Did you just pop who popped a new one?
Me.
I did.
I guess a couple of us did.
Here's something else to say about it. It's one of the things that I would say that Granville Island does, that I think might have been different if they hadn't been brought into the sort of the Molson universe. This is a very chuggable beer. I don't think Granville Island makes a product right now that you couldn't just knock her back, right? Yeah. Whereas, like, not all of what's going on in craft beer is like really aimed at that type of drinking. A lot of it's sort of more something that you sip it over a longer time, right? It's a little not just a knock her back thirst quencher. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, honestly...
It's like after running around, like, playing outside in the snow. No, it's not snowing. Well, whatever I get up to this holiday season, if I was out being active and I was, kind of thirsty, I could knock back a few of these, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's it.
Poker game.
I'm used to, these days, having beers that are a little bit more bold. And there's a difference between easy drinking and something that's pretending to be bold but really isn't. I wouldn't call this beer easy drinking, even though I guess it is, but it's not bold enough to be a bold beer.
No, you're right.
You know what I'm getting at?
I totally know what you're getting at, yeah.
So it's almost like it's trying to be a little bit of both to please everybody, but in the end, you get a meh beer. It's a good beer. If somebody offered me one, I'd have it, right?
Oh yeah.
But if I go to a beer store and I see this huge selection of beers, this is the one I'm going to pass over. For something that's a little bit more bold, or if I want something that's easy drinking, I'm going to go for a Blue Buck, or maybe even another Granville Island product. I don't think it would be this one.
So that's a resounding two thumbs sideways
Island,
from
Pale Ale is. Do you guys remember?
The which one?
The Granville Island Pale Ale. What's it called?
Oh, my lord. I can see
Well,
the
whatever.
bottle.
I mean, if I was looking for something that's easy drinking, I'd have that over this.
Mm.
But for a winter beer,
The English Bay Pale Ale. That's
yeah,
what it's
English Bay Pale Ale, I'd have that over this.
Mm.
And if I was going for a winter beer, I'd go for something that has a little bit more oomph to it than this does. Something that's got a little bit more flavor, a little bit more kick, and certainly a higher alcohol content. Whereas this
Well, they
one's
also
less.
have the. I mean, Granville Island has got a couple of seasonals aside from this one, and I don't know if we've had them. Actually, is that? I think did we do the raspberry ale? I can't remember.
Yes, we did.
So what did you? I mean, that was also that's another seasonal they do. So what did you think? Do you recall what you thought of that compared to this one?
Was that
Well,
Black
actually,
Betty?
I think no. We had the Buried Alive from Longwood,
Okay.
Well, we've had Black Betty too.
but that was Vancouver Island.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've had so many, we're getting them all confused. I think we've had. This is episode 43. So we've
And we do
had
multiple beers.
49, maybe 50 different beers now.
Yeah.
That are just it's becoming too much. We'll have to make like a list of when we get to February and we get to our 1 year anniversary, then I think we should make sure we release a list of all the beers we've tried and kind of
Absolutely.
and come up with our like top tens or something. Yeah, so I mean I don't know. I like this one. It's not one I would have like 12 of in a sitting, but did I say 12? I meant a couple. But thanks, Dave. But it's a thing that happens in the winter and around November and ends in January. So
So before we started, Lockhart was going to ask us a question. He thought we were actually
bottle
live
or
at the
can?
Huh?
Bottle or can?
Yeah. So bottle or can. So two of us are drinking this out of the bottle, and two of us are drinking out of cans. So
Guess who's drinking from the cans?
yeah, it's the guys on the island. And the reason why I bought cans, and I explained this to the guys before, is the particular store that I went to had this both in bottles, 6-pack bottles and 6-pack cans. The cans are 355 mils, while the bottle was 330 some odd.
341.
341. So the can has 14 more mils than the bottle. Yet the 2 6-packs were priced exactly the same. So I mean, there's.
Well, what did you pay for your 6-pack?
I paid $12.49 plus tax.
Yeah, mine was actually $1.30 something less than that, like $1.30 less.
Okay. So anyway, I mean, this just.
So you got scammed.
Well, no, that's called living on the island.
Oh, that's it.
Which you may have
I
forgotten
bought the
seeing
can
it's been gone
just
so long.
because it was just a better value over the bottle.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, when I went to the store, I was actually looking for cans because I normally would buy cans. That's sort of I prefer that because there's more beer in them. But they weren't. I couldn't find them. They weren't available in cans. It was only available in bottles.
But
It was like one of those. It was like one of those big stacks, that they have. The actual flavor.
What did you pay for them?
11 something. 11.20 or something like that. I could look it up. I have the thing around here somewhere.
I should have kept my receipt.
It was 11 something. Although I will point out as well that it was actually marked as being on sale as well. So
there you go.
that's probably why.
Maybe
Rather important little detail.
I'll go look. Hang on.
While he's away, so Locke, you pose the question. What do you prefer, cans or bottles? Do you find that there is a flavor difference?
I mean,
All right, got my BC liquor thing here.
experience of the like drinking out of a can is fine when I'm in the mood to be drinking shitty beer out of a can. Generally speaking, if I'm enjoying the beer, I want it out of glass because
Right.
I feel like it sort of the experience is different somehow.
Well, and it depends on the beer, really. I mean, look at Guinness. If I'm going to have a Guinness, you can get it in bottles and cans, but you better believe it. I'm buying a can every single time.
Yeah, but that's nitro. That's a different.
Exactly. But I mean, still.
But okay. Granted, here's the thing though. Like, Guinness out of a can. I've done it again. Mostly camping, and it's great. I mean, nothing like it. You climb a hill, crack a Guinness, nice. But it's still like, I don't know. Usually, I guess my psychological association, and now maybe I'm just trying to figure it out, and I'm making stuff up. But I think it's that I've been to so many parties where if cans are involved, usually the object isn't to savor the beer, but rather to socialize and or just get really, really drunk.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's my psychological association with cans. Which is not a bad association, incidentally. It's a wonderful association, but not one that befits savoring the flavor,
Okay, so what about, say, like Yellow Dog Brewery, where they produce all of their stuff in cans, but it's not just regular cans.
Oh, no. I respect the position. I don't prefer it myself, but I respect it. Like, there are really good reasons to prefer cans. One of them, glass is a problem in the environment when you're talking about broken glass being in situations where people are going to get cut by it, or just general issues around glass. It's fussy, right? Yeah. Aluminum is way easier to recycle. There's a lot to be said for aluminum. Don't get me wrong. There are good reasons to prefer it, but the experience, I kind of like bottles better. That's the honest truth. That is, if the purpose is to taste the beer rather than to just
get wasted.
Get wrecked.
Yeah.
Well, there's something to be said for aluminum cans versus the glass. We're living in Canada, so our glass is real glass as opposed to like the UK, where if you want to smash a glass and shiv somebody with it, you can't. But
glass in Britain on their bottles now. Really?
I'm making this up as I go.
Okay, no. What could it mean? You had me going.
No, I'm serious. Actually, the glasses apparently now I have not been to England, but the things that I have read about England and pub culture in England is that a number of years ago, specifically in London. I'm just saying London. I'm not saying all of England, where the glass is now safety glass, or it's a type of safety glass where they were finding, I gather, that there were a few too many fights that the police were willing to deal with. So now, if you take a glass, a beer glass, a pint glass, apparently in London pubs, and somebody tries to smash it, it won't fracture and have pointy things. It actually shatters like safety glass. So you can't take that glass and knives. Now, granted, it was an article in CBC many probably 5-6 years ago, so I could be remembering it wrong. But it always stuck with me that that's actually not a terrible idea. Because actually, one thing around here, living across from the Red Truck Brewery, the one thing I have noticed since they've been around is that we're finding bottles around the neighborhood just being set down, but we're also finding bottles that are being shattered, and specifically being shattered in grass. So they've been put into onto the grass, and then somebody has stepped on them and smashed them there. And I have dogs, so it's a dick move, especially when you have cyclists riding up and down the street all the time that stop off at the pub and then decide to use our front door as a urinal. So that actually, I would say I'm glad that Canada doesn't have some weird glass law about glasses and pint glasses in pubs, because really, if I see another cyclist stopping off to pee in my doorway, I want to smash a bottle and stab them to death in the neck with it, because, I hate cyclists anyway because they're dicks. Cyclists, I'm sorry, you're all dicks.
Oh.
No, but and let me. Okay, now that I've said that, now that I've said that aloud, hang on.
Shut
No,
up.
hang on.
Hey.
Let me tell you why I'm saying this.
No.
And then you can have your say. Oh, fine.
Hey, look,
I'm a cyclist, and I get sick and tired of shitheads like you.
This
telling
has
us
nothing to do with me driving,
Dude,
by the way. This has
why
nothing to do with
we're
me
like
being
the
a driver.
dregs of society.
No.
Huh?
The reason this has nothing to do with driving cars or anything. It has everything to do with construction on our street. About 4 years ago, they redirected the street out in front of our house, where they turned it 45 degrees in one direction because they were increasing the lot size next door to build some bigger buildings. But during that process, they're digging up the road, they're throwing pipes and things in,
It was a
and
mess.
actually Dave was living here at the time, and so that was a bit of a pain. And our street during the Olympics had been declared part of the green bypass or byway or whatever they called it. And anyway, so they put big signs up on Second Avenue or Great Northern Way, saying to cyclists, stay on Second, don't come down because we've closed the road. Because there were big holes in the ground, there were all kinds of things. But cyclists kept coming down. And then, of course, they'd get partway down, the road was disappearing at times, and they were like, oh, well, so they'd have to turn around and go back. The signs that were telling cyclists to stay on Second remained there for quite some time because it was kind of unpredictable what was going on the street. But because cyclists kept coming down and the bike path disappeared into a 40-foot pit, they decided at one point that Second needed. The thing is, they needed to do construction on Second, so they opened up a small path for cyclists back on our street. So they started coming back down our street, even though they hadn't really stopped, but in bigger numbers. And the thing was, part of what had happened is that because they have where the pipes and all the kinds of digging they had to do, they decided to run cyclists down our sidewalk right in front of our building. But what they did was put these big gates up that would force cyclists to get off, walk their bikes the length of our building, and then get back on their bikes and continue riding. What they did do was not that. They kept riding down our street at full tilt, and to the point where we actually, a whole bunch of us, decided for about 3 or 4 days to actually go out on the sidewalk and just walk up and down to basically make a point, to say, get off your fucking bike. There's a big sign saying, get off your fucking bike, and don't be an asshole. And I could not believe it. The amount of dicks that came down there screaming at us on the sidewalk to get out of the way and all this kind of crap.
You're just one of those greedy people that wants to be able to sit outside their house without being in danger. They're saving the planet, man.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is that I couldn't believe the attitude of the cyclists coming up and down. There were a bunch. Now, granted, there were a bunch that actually would get off. They walked their bike, and they were very friendly. But there were more of them on the dick side of things because and I just couldn't quite understand it. And then what really happened, what really put the ire in my argument was on the third floor of our building there is a Buddhist temple, and there are a lot of people that come to that temple, and a lot of them are in walkers, have canes, are really not that young, they're kind of old. And a cyclist came came screaming down the sidewalk and wiped out a couple of these people that had walkers and canes.
If he'd been running, that would
Yeah, exactly. That would have been even better. I'm running my bike. But no, they wiped them out, and then they fucked off. They got back on their bike and buggered off. They didn't even stop. So this is why, and this is the thing, that at least for Vancouver anyway, there's this weird attitude that cyclists have about because there are assigned streets for them to go on, that they think they own these streets. And the reality is, and they can have that attitude. I don't really care about the attitude. It's the fact that they have this contempt for people that have cars or are driving, anywhere in the city, really. But I don't know, me as a cyclist, because I have a bike, and when I ride where there aren't cars as often as I can, and I don't have contempt for drivers. I know I'm a driver. I know what cars do, because the reality is, no matter, just hang on, but no matter what my attitude as a cyclist is towards cars, I don't really have one, because no matter what I think, I will lose. If I want to go head to head with 7,000 pounds of steel and glass, I'm going to lose no matter how much I'm in the right. And, that's the reality, is that if I'm going to be an asshole towards pedestrians, why would a cyclist be a dick towards pedestrians? And I saw so many assholes out here for months, and I couldn't believe it. It really changed me from being somebody who said, we should share the road, to we really ought to license cyclists. Because if you're going to be an asshole towards pedestrians, if that's your attitude towards people that you're going to hurt if you run them over, I think we should have a slalom on all streets. Cyclists have to go in and out, weave in and out of traffic constantly, just in the middle of the street, not on the sidewalk or not on a bike lane, in traffic, to prove a point that, if you want to be a dick towards the guy that's tailgating you or the guy that you're tailgating, go right ahead, but you're going to lose no matter what happens. No matter how on the right you are, you will lose, because you will get crushed more than your bike is going to crush them. To all cyclists, there you go.
So let me rebut here. Okay, so I'm a cyclist. I'm actually.
And the next time I see you, I'm gonna run you down.
So I'm a fair weather cyclist. So I actually haven't ridden since the end of October. But when I do ride, I follow the rules of the road. I follow all signs. I signal. I stop for people at crosswalks. Blah 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 blah. Yet all I hear is about how all cyclists are dirty pricks that have no respect for the law.
And your point is?
Well, the point is that there's a lot of us out there that are like me. But for whatever reason, a few very visible minority of cyclists make a bad name for all of us. So why doesn't
same
that
for
happen
drivers
for
too, right?
drivers? Why doesn't that happen for drivers?
It does happen for drivers.
No,
They're
it
dicks
doesn't.
in cars all the
No,
time.
because all drivers are pieces of crap, right?
All drivers are pieces of crap?
Well, nobody saes that.
Of course they do.
Because
What city do you live in?
There are a few out there that are, but they don't sort of create like a blanket statement for all drivers. So why does a few bad cyclists create a blanket statement that refers to all cyclists?
Because that's just the way it is.
Screw you.
Look, if you're to damn all cyclists and all drivers, I'd agree on both counts. You know what? I just add one more. Damn the fucking pedestrians.
Actually, what's really funny is that, well, actually it wasn't funny, it was incredibly tragic and sad. But somebody last year, the year before, in downtown Vancouver, crossed the street in front of a dump truck, like a big truck, and was sadly crushed to death. But something that somebody said in the newspaper was that there were other people there with that pedestrian. That pedestrian apparently said something negative towards this truck and crossed anyway. But when you're in a dump truck and you're like, 5-6 feet tall, no one driving a dump truck when you're right there is going to see you. So the guy went and killed this pedestrian. But my point being is that attitude of contempt for other forms of travel is the problem. It's not the drivers, it's not the cyclists, it's not the pedestrians. It's the fact that we have these attitudes about these things, and when that happens, bad shit happens. And this is what I'm saying about the cyclists out front. I would say out of every 10 cyclists, only 2 got off and actually walked, the length of our building on our crosswalk or on our sidewalk. And And that's I mean, this is why I'm saying that I my attitude towards cyclists changed at that point, because the vast majority of the ones that I encountered were on the dick side. So
I've had a number of close friends that are cyclists over the years. Some of them professional cyclists, and what I'll say is, yeah, they're dicks. They're totally dicks. That's a cycle. Everybody's kind of got their issue, don't they?
that's true, and I mean, my favorite argument is the ones like, well, they've got streets in Holland. Why don't we have those here? Well, we don't.
Of the two most professional cyclists I know, they're both dead. Only one of them, interestingly, from an actual bicycle accident. But yeah, one of the two. He thought he could beat. Okay, talking about contempt for other forms of transit. Trains crossing. He figures, no, I got this.
Well, that actually that's kind of happened here as well.
Is it only takes one.
Well, exactly. It doesn't take much to get crushed by a bunch of steel and stuff. So that actually happened. I mean, people actually have contempt for trains in the city as well, because for quite some time, CN Rail, or whoever the hell owns the track, because there's a track that runs from downtown Vancouver out to out by UBC, sort of down the Arbutus right of way, and for the longest time, because they shut down that track ages ago, and it was so incredibly, like, it was rarely used, if ever. People started putting gardens and things, and they actually had a garden, like a community garden, built up on top of the tracks. And then last year, was it last year? I think it was last year. Maybe it might have been earlier this year. I can't remember, but there was a pissing contest between the city and the railway, where the city decided that they wanted to, appropriate that land for something, and the rail, they obviously know nothing about the rail system in this country, and the rail company was like, no. And then there was this, basically a war of words and whatnot going on at City Hall. And the rail company just said, fine, if you guys are going to be dicks, we're going to claim back our land and fuck your little gardens. And they actually went out there and just ripped all of these community gardens down to nothing. And it was interesting because the city thought they had more power over railway right-of-ways, and they found out very quickly they don't. So, I don't know.
Rail is federal.
Hey,
well, exactly, and that's the thing. And the other thing is that now, of course, apparently by 2020 or 2018, whatever it is, they're actually going to start running rail. They're going to use that line for training engineers to operate trains. And so, of course, now, you just like in North Van, you're going to have large trains going through residential neighborhoods that have not been used to trains for some time. They're going to be blowing their horn, which I love. So I don't know. It's kind of like that thing where,
to New West.
If you're going to be, in the case of a cyclist, if you want to be a dick, or if you're a driver in a car and you want to be a dick and you crush somebody with your car, or a cyclist cuts off a car and loses the battle, the attitude about being an asshole is just you're going to lose. And the city found that out. Many neighborhoods over on the west side of Vancouver found that out. And of course, the sad tragedy is that if you're a dick about anything and you have this contempt towards another form of travel or the guy across the street, there are consequences to that sort of stuff. And unfortunately,
fuck cyclists.
Yeah, exactly. Fuck cyclists. Run them all down. Death Race 2000.
One more point. Somebody had mentioned, I think, Shane, you had mentioned that there needs to be licensing for cyclists. I think that's a bad idea, and here's why.
All right.
I think the cost of putting together a provincial program for licensing cyclists would be a huge cost burden on taxpayers. In order to have cyclists pay for it themselves, I mean, the cost of a license per year is going to be extraordinarily high, far more than what a cyclist could afford to pay. Secondly, what are you going to do with kids? Are you going to license kids?
Shoot them.
Shoot kids. Okay.
When in doubt, shoot
This
them.
is a sound argument.
Well, no, and that's the thing. I mean, I remember back in, and maybe actually, Alan, you can tell us if elementary schools still run those cycling safety things
With
at
the
some point.
police? They do not.
They don't.
They do not.
Because I remember doing
Why?
that probably like in what, grade 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah. They used to run them. They don't run them in the schools anymore, but the Saanich Police does still run them. So you can do them like on a weekend, or like, I think they do them on like a Saturday or something. And you can register for it for free, and they do exactly the same thing as they did when we were in school.
Cool. Tom Thumb's Safety Village is gone, right?
Pardon?
Tom Thumb's Safety Village is gone, right?
Yes, it is gone.
Darn. That makes me so sad. Well, I mean, the thing is that it's. I agree. I don't think licensing is the way to go as cyclist. I think that there needs to. And here's the thing. I'm not even sure how to solve this problem. I don't even know where to even start, because it's so strange. My experience with the cyclists on our street, it was just so strange that they had that attitude towards people on the sidewalk, and they had this. There were some very vocal dudes that were riding through there, and it was like that they owned the sidewalk, even though there was signage saying "dismount." This is a pedestrian, whatever the language of
Realistically, no cyclist should be on the road that's on the fucking sidewalk.
Well, the thing was, the road was gone at that point, which is why they were doing it. But there was also major construction on the street just up from us, which is the only other artery in this area, right? So it made sense, but it was just this very strange attitude that we kept running into, and which is why we went outside as en masse to basically block cyclists from being dicks, because it became a real issue. And then when the women got run down by that cyclist who then buggered off, they actually shut the sidewalk off entirely and said, "Fuck you guys, you're up on 2nd Avenue." So
just to keep all of this in a little bit of context, was Vancouver not chosen a year ago as the most congested city in North America?
I have no idea. I don't recall that, but maybe I missed it.
Statistics, traffic congestion anywhere in North America, which I can believe.
Even more than LA?
Worse than LA that year. Maybe not every year, but like 2014. My understanding is that Vancouver won the award of.
Actually, you're right. I just did this little search here. The Globe and Mail in 2015 in March is that Vancouver has the worst traffic congestion in the country. I don't know about North America, but at least in Canada.
Yeah, that makes more sense. I can't see Vancouver beating LA.
Statistics as well.
Well, the biggest problem with Vancouver is that we have this downtown center, which is basically on an island. So take like downtown Victoria, lift it off of the island, build another island big enough just off the coast of Victoria, put the downtown core there, and then give it only 3 bridges and 2 streets or 4 streets, and then the rest is ocean. So, I mean, that's the major issue, is that people are targeting the downtown area when they're driving into town, and there's also this very strange. It's strange to me. I mean, I don't know how realistic this is, but for the longest time, people had this attitude that if in order to own a home in Vancouver, you had to live out in the sticks, out in Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, stuff like that, and then of course commute all the way into downtown. And I think that's not unusual. I think that's common to a lot of large cities like New York and Chicago and probably and Montreal. But at the time, the real estate wasn't really that dissimilar. Like, it really wasn't. You could live closer to downtown for another $100,000, and out in the sticks, you'd be living in out in the sticks, in suburbia. So there was just that kind of weird dichotomy, that attitude about it. And now, of course, it doesn't matter because if you want to live out in the sticks, go ahead, but you're going to pay the same bloody price for a house as you would closer to town. It's sort of this weird leveling off has sort of occurred. I mean, you're going to find some cheaper stuff, I imagine, further out, but not a lot is my point. Like not nowhere near as it was say 10 years ago.
A lot of pressure for people to go to and from a place that's hard to get to because of bridges.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, which reminds me, they just announced was it yesterday or it might have been today? The new bridge that's replacing the Massey Tunnel, which has caused all kinds of grief.
Well, good, because I hate that Massey Tunnel.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. The Massey Tunnel is not big enough, and this new bridge is like a 10-lane, something or other monster of a bridge. It'll be the biggest bridge in BC or Canada or something.
There was a time when I loved it.
Actually, no, it wouldn't be Canada. The Confederation Bridge is way bigger.
Not a bridge. It was cool to see that we could do that. We can make a tunnel. Cool. We can do,
Yeah, exactly. But now, I mean, that tunnel went in a long time ago, 62.
Every time you get to that corridor, you know what you're going to be doing. You're going to be slowing down, right? Like
exactly, and that's the problem. I mean, basically, if you could make the equivalent would be the Colwood Crawl in Victoria, where getting from Victoria to the Western communities, or sorry, as it's called now, the West Shore. It's one of those communities that there's just that choke point because of geography or whatever, and jamming a tunnel under that section of water is fine, but it's way too old now. It's like the bridges that are further up the river. Masset County. What?
The bridges in Madison County.
No, the bridges further up the river that go into Surrey.
I was trying to
they've been fixing those bridges off and on forever, and they bitched and moaned about the new bridge going in and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, bridges age out. They will eventually fall down. My favorite part being when a homeless group of people set fire to the south end of one of the bridges and had to close the bridge. But because there was creosote-soaked, wood and stuff like that. So
yeah.
But it did point out that those bridges are really important, and that's actually was kind of interesting. That after the fire and after that section of bridge basically broke and they had to replace it, they luckily had a bridge being built not too far away that had some spare sections they could use. But the reality was that's when, at least from what I saw on the news, that's when the argument for the new bridge kind of died off, because they realized this bridge, it's important, or I'm not going to get to work. Like, that's the thing, is that if that bridge didn't exist, they're driving, 20 clicks west to get to the next bridge, and it's not easy to get through. So, anyway, but yeah, so there's a new bridge going in to replace the Massey Tunnel. It's $3.5 billion. It is going to be the biggest bridge in British Columbia, and it is 10 lanes wide, so I guess 5 lanes on each side.
Holy cow!
Well, that's the major choke point, because that is it's people commuting through that direction, but also that's really the major route for trucks, things like that coming into Vancouver from, and not to mention there's a whole bunch of stuff coming in off of the BC ferries, as well as a bunch of other stuff. So. Having to do with shipping and the coal and all that kind of stuff out in Swansea.
Places on the planet due for a major earthquake. How many can you list right now that don't have that bridge on it?
Well, put it this way: all of the bridges, with the exception of the Queensboro, the ones going to Surrey, if we had a large enough earthquake, they cannot guarantee those bridges would still stand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're actually, I think they're almost done, the one that's replacing Port Mann, I think? I don't remember. But one of the bridges is going into Surrey, because they built the Golden Ears Bridge, which is going into to Port Coquitlam and further east. The new bridge for the major artery going into Surrey from New West is almost done. And then, of course, there's the Queensboro, which I don't remember when it was built, but it's relatively new, and maybe 15 years, 20 years. and then they have the Massey Tunnel. So yeah, it's due for a new bridge. It's due for a bridge that's not going to fall down in a major earthquake, which is our major problem in this part of the world. Is that it's all fun and games until something goes 9.5 on the Richter scale, and then we're going to be in trouble. I can't imagine a huge earthquake and the Lionsgate Bridge surviving. To North Van, the bridge further east, the Iron Workers Memorial Bridge, I think is much newer, obviously, but again, it's an older bridge, so I imagine it's going to be fine. But all the engineering in the world, you can only do so much until the world decides to move underneath your feet, and I don't think that. We'll see. We'll see what happens, because once that happens, I don't think we're going to be worried about bridges. We're going to be worried about whether or not our buildings that we're in are going to collapse on our heads.
To me, it kind of prompts the way we get back and forth, and the whole business of getting back and forth, the idea of a centralized city where everybody has to go and visit that place in order to get work done might be outdated in its way. When I think about people, relying on these things in order to make their lives work, I got to wonder: A, is this whole business of hub and spoke living making sense anymore?
No.
2, A, I guess B would be the next one, but if you were to get rid of the automobile as your main way of doing stuff, what would take its place? I don't believe myself that it's the Segway. Is there another way of getting people around that would be if you made people stop wasting energy just trying to get from one place to another in order to do basic work like accounting and whatever functional tasks need to be addressed in order to make the society work. A lot of those probably you don't need to drive 4 hours a day in order to.
No, that's very true. There's
not doing that really.
There is a lot of stuff about corporate culture that's outdated. Specifically, working in the same space. There's a lot of that could be replaced by virtualized meeting, virtualized this, that, and the other things. However, there is a benefit of actually having people working in the same location, and I don't think that's really definitely is not the issue, because there are some benefits from doing that where you can actually have interaction with a human being rather than a screen, which this podcast would be so awesome if we were all in the same place. So move out of the sticks, boys. Move here to Vancouver, where Locke and I are.
Or you guys move to the island.
But seriously, yeah, that'll never happen. But the other thing, but the actual issue is what Locke was saying, is that is the mode of travel that we move around in outdated, and now that people in the U.S. are going to have to register all their drones, which I'm very excited about, by the way. I was actually on a side note to drones. I actually mentioned this to one of my castmates last night at our improv show. Just asked him randomly about what he thought about drones, because he seemed really stressed that day. And I gather
you brought up drones.
Let me clarify. He is an air traffic controller. He's like in the tower.
Oh, okay.
So, but where he is, he's at an airport way out in the east, up the valley, which is relatively quiet. But when it gets sunny, that's when all the people that have Cessnas and ultralights and all those sorts of things decide on the same day, oh my God, there's no rain, I'm going to go fly today. Which is where they get stressed, because then you have all these people as they want to get out of their hangars into the air. But the other thing is that he said that they had to close the airport for something like 45 minutes because a real estate person selling homes nearby was flying a drone to take pictures of the property from the air, which on any other day when the traffic is really low, because people don't like to fly in the rain, they don't like to fly when the weather's not great. That would have been okay, but on the day that they chose to do this, and granted, they actually warned the airport. They said, "Hey guys, we have a license to do this. You have to close the one runway where we can fly without any risk of anything happening." But his words were, "Drones are the bane of my existence." And he went on basically to say that there are too many. I mean, this is the thing. Like cyclists, like drivers, like whatever, like pedestrians, there are drone pilots who are also dicks. And that was the big thing.
What about that real estate agent? Really? You're going to be looking at that picture? Oh, tell me he didn't get the drone aiming it so that he doesn't cap any of the airport next to this house that you're seeing.
Well, this is the thing, right? Apparently, the Vancouver airport, the major airport out in Richmond, in 2015 so far, at least for the next couple of weeks anyway, until the year is into 2016, has had something like 220 close calls with drones because people are flying drones high enough where they could get sucked into the engine of a major airliner. So, and this is the major problem.
I'm just thinking, when that piece of real estate goes on the market, how many people do you think are going to calculate? Oh, you mean I've got planes taking off so close to me that if there's a drone in the air taking pictures of the property, it would get sucked in? Whew, wow, that's a mighty fine property.
Well, here's the other thing too.
There.
Yeah, exactly. The property values dive after that.
Right.
But that's the major problem, is that they have these. I mean, this is what's happening in the States right now. Is they now have the FAA has said, all right, if you have a drone that's under half a pound, then you're okay. But if you're above a pound or half a pound, you have to register with the FAA. But the thing was really interesting is that a lot of people said, whatever, I'm not going to get caught by the FAA. But the thing is, they actually made the fines starting at $25,000. So it wasn't like a $100 fine for being a dick near an airport or whatever. It was like, if you fly your drone and you're not registered, this is the first thing you get is a $25,000 fine. Boom, you're done. That's what you get. And then after that, we determine what you were doing with your drone. And then if you were doing something stupid like flying it near an airport just because there's no trees, then you're going to go to jail. And I kind of thought, so Canada's got to do something very similar because the few dicks with flipping drones, flying these drones at 3,000 feet close to, what is traditionally...
Look how ready the U.S. is to control drones, and yet not a peep about flying.
Well, exactly, yeah, this is the thing, right? So, but there are still Americans trying to come into Canada that have handguns. So, they get surprised when they have to not have them.
What an interesting podcast this has been. We've gone from talking about Granville Island, Lions Winter Gate, Winter Ale.
Winter Gate? Winter Gate.
Talking about Winter Gate. Next one,
Winter Ale. Winter. Talking about how cyclists are morons, to talking about drones, bridges, and how they're all going to collapse in an earthquake, to talking about how different modes of transportation, and now we're talking about drones, and now we're going to get on to gun smuggling into
I'm going to give you, by the way, if anyone watching this,
time to wrap this one up.
Tonight is the opening of Star Wars The Force Awakens. I want to talk about anything except that. So let's talk about Mr. Rogers and his connections to the Nazi Party, because I'll make up anything to not talk about Star Wars The Force Awakens. I posted on Facebook today my ultimatum that any of you jackasses that try and spoil it for me, I'm going to kill you.
Shane, I want you to listen to this.
Okay, sorry.
Shane. Darth Vader is Luke's father.
I'm done. I'm out.
You know what?
I'm gonna go get another beer.
Actually, I read an honest-to-God little news story because, of course, everybody our age is reminiscing, right? I read a story about this character who said he had gotten into line with a bunch of buddies of his in some city somewhere, San Francisco, whatever, I'm not sure. And he said he and his buddies are waiting in line. Along come this fucking van with, I guess, just some yahoos in it, right? They pulled up alongside this line of people waiting to get in, and I guess the door's open, and some fuckwad gets out of the van or leans out of the door, whatever, and he yells, and apparently he did this a few times because I guess the line was probably huge, and he yells, "Vader is Luke's father." Can you imagine that? If somebody actually did that to you before you got a chance to watch Empire, like I would have just gone nuclear.
That never happened to me, at least in the Star Wars world. When I was going in, now Alan, you may have been there. I don't remember. We went to see Alien 3.
No, I wasn't there.
But I went to see Alien 3 at the Odeon in downtown Victoria. And two of my friends had been in the showing before. And when they came out, one of them said, "Don't forget the bucket." And I thought, what the hell? And sure enough, if you were paying attention, you looked for the bucket in that film, and the bucket gives you the answer to what's going to happen for like the last 20 minutes of the movie. I was so mad. I didn't care. I didn't care. I'm going to spoil Alien 3 for everybody, so close your ears if you haven't seen it. In Alien, it's actually Locke. First, I have to ask you, have you seen Alien 3?
Yes, I've totally seen Alien 3.
Okay, that's a good. Well, there is if you obviously you didn't notice, but or don't remember, but there was a bucket that got covered in lead from the smelter that then got hit with some water during one of the training runs where they were planning on capturing the alien, and the bucket breaks and splits, gets a big split in the side, or breaks in half, or whatever the hell happens, which of course is what happens to the alien at the end of the film. So when they were testing and basically just giving you the, they weren't being explicit and saying we're going to throw lead on top of him and kill him. They didn't really describe what actually would occur, but about 3/4 of the way through the film, they have this metal bucket that gets covered in lead, and then it cools off and then breaks. So it basically, if you weren't paying attention,
foreshadowing?
It is called foreshadowing. But the thing is, as long as somebody doesn't fucking tell you walking in through the front door,
I see.
It doesn't matter. And so when I saw that, it was like one of those moments of like, man. So anyway,
do we all have our tickets?
I don't. I better actually. Which reminds me, and I'm inviting everyone who watches this, which is like this many. When I go to Victoria on Christmas Day, there will be, I think on the 28th is sort of the plan. We are going to do a marathon at my sister's house on her big, huge 60-inch television of the first 3 films.
Cool.
And then there's some other movies that I don't remember. Which reminds me, since it is Star Wars but it's not about the new movie. If you can find it on YouTube, somebody has put cuts of episodes 1 through 3 up, and he refers to them as the anti-cheese cuts. So I actually watched the first 20 minutes of episode 1, and the guy actually just didn't recut the film. He actually took out, he removed the Gungan city. But when you meet Jar Jar and the aliens, the Trade Federation aliens at the very beginning, he actually took out their dialogue, replaced it with very believable sort of Star Wars-ish voices that were alien languages, and replaced their dialogue with dialogue he felt was more appropriate, because he wanted the Trade Federation to be more evil and not such goofy, "Oh my God, the Jedi are here." They were like, no, he wanted them to be confident. The Jedi are nothing. We're gonna kill them. It's not a problem. None of that sort of goofy like, "Oh my God, did we tell the Emperor?" No, none of that. And then Jar Jar shows up, And Jar Jar is very direct. He's like, "Hey, you want to get in the city? I totally got a way in. I'll totally show you right now." And then next thing you know, they're in the city. They cut everything about the Gungan underwater town and all that kind of crap. Going to the planet's core. That's totally gone, thank God. But Jar Jar has this voice. He doesn't have the Misa, no. Dead. That Jar Jar is dead. So actually, I hope that the cuts still survive into next week, because I actually think those should be the cuts we watch, not the DVDs or Blu-rays, because that, I think, would be quite interesting. Apparently, the episode 2 is still a little shaky, but episode 3 is apparently almost a different film. So I think we should check those out. So yes, it is Star Wars opening tonight. I have some people in town that have made fun of me constantly, and they actually, in about 8 minutes, will start seeing their episode, their presentation. So
I'm going to it on Saturday afternoon.
You don't know how much I hate you right now.
Well, I know how much you hate me.
So anyway, so I'm going to see with my sister when the 28th-ish, somewhere in there.
Cool. I'm
in Victoria. So who's coming with me? Locke, you're in Toronto, so screw you. But Dave, are you coming down to Victoria at any time, Dave?
I want to. I really do. I might be working both my fucking jobs that day.
Oh man, you are just a sad man, you.
Yes.
You should just walk into your job and be like, "Screw you! It's Star Wars. This is more important than my responsibility, integrity, and everything else combined. Self-respect. Screw that too." Yeah. So anyway, I think we should shut up now and go away, because you're right, Alan. We talked about everything under the sun, avoiding Star Wars as much as possible. And I will point out that this, I think, is the second to last episode of the year. I think we will do one more next week on Wednesday, which will be the 23rd. I'm assuming we'll have a Christmas theme for that entire episode. And by then, with the exception of myself, I think all of us will have watched Star Wars. So I'm not going to talk about Star Wars at all again next week. At all, ever. I'm going to talk about infrastructure, education, politics, anything but to talk about cool shit. So, Alan, when people are trying to find you online and you're not doing the Crafty Boys stuff, where can they locate you?
Well, they can go on Twitter, because I'm there.
Cool. What about you, Dave?
The same. I wouldn't be as easy to find. You got to be looking for the Fool. That's the Phule. If you want to find me.
Kick ass. And Locke, of course, people can find you online, but not on Facebook, which I'm jealous as hell about, because you are a non-Facebook, anti-Facebook user. You're never on there because you don't have an account. So where else can they find
you right now? I would. Virtual high five.
Rock up the face of the earth.
Exactly. But they can find you, of course, where? On Twitter, I think?
I don't really access that account anymore, but, I had a Twitter.
That's fine. We know where to find you. Because if you can't be found... I'm suddenly going to Jar Jar alien voice. Of course, if you can't find any of us individually, you will always be able to find us here at the Crafty Boys, which, of course, is thecraftyboys.ca. On Twitter, we're the Crafty Boys, as well as on Facebook, as well as on Google+, and insert 500 other social media channels that are available. And so thank you again for watching. I hope you guys come back. I'm sorry that we talked about everything except Star Wars. I know you really wanted us to. But we will see you, of course, next week. And don't forget that if you don't watch us, you're missing out high-quality beer talk.